Speak 7 lines to yourself every morning. Before you reach for your phone, before you remember what must be done, and before the world begins placing its expectations upon you, there is a sacred moment waiting to be noticed. It arrives quietly. It is the moment between sleep and activity, between the person you were yesterday and the person you are about to become today. In that brief space, your mind has not yet been completely claimed by schedules, responsibilities, memories, messages, and noise. Yet for many people, this sacred space is immediately filled with fear. The eyes open, and the mind begins. I am tired. I am already behind. I have too much to do. What if something goes wrong? Why has my life not changed? Why am I still struggling with this? These thoughts may appear so quickly that you do not recognize them as thoughts. They feel like facts. They feel like an accurate description of your life and of who you are. But they are not necessarily the truth. They may simply be old messages created by an identity that has learned to expect difficulty. They may be the voice of a frightened mind attempting to protect you from uncertainty by preparing you for disappointment before the day has even begun. And when you begin each morning by listening only to this voice, you carry yesterday into a moment that has never existed before. The body wakes up, but the mind remains inside. Old conversations. The sun rises, but your attention returns to old wounds. A new day arrives, but the ego repeats an old identity. This is why your first inner conversation matters. The words you speak to yourself in the morning are not meaningless sounds. They become the emotional atmosphere through which you meet the day. They influence the way you interpret another person's behavior, the way you respond to unexpected changes, the way you remember your past, and the way you see yourself. Words spoken repeatedly become beliefs. Beliefs become expectations. Expectations influence choices, and choices gradually create the direction of a life. This does not mean that a few positive sentences will magically remove every challenge. These words are not commands that force the universe to obey your plans. They are not a method of pretending that grief, uncertainty, injustice, or pain do not exist. They are reminders. They remind you that you do not have to enter the day as the most frightened version of yourself. They remind you that you can meet life from awareness rather than habit, from love rather than fear, and from inner alignment rather than constant resistance. There are 7 lines you can speak to yourself each morning. I am more than my thoughts, my fears, and my past. I release yesterday and allow this moment to be new. I do not need to control everything in order to be at peace. I choose to meet myself and the world with love. I free myself and others through forgiveness. I trust the wisdom of the source even when I cannot see the entire path. I carry peace within me, and I offer that peace wherever I go. You do not need to say them loudly. You do not need to say them perfectly. You do not even need to fully believe every word the first time you speak them. You are simply opening another door within your mind. The ego has been repeating its messages for years. It has told you that your value depends on success, that your peace depends on other people's behavior, and that your safety depends on controlling what happens next. These 7 lines introduce a different possibility. They invite you to remember that beneath the anxious mind, beneath the roles you perform, beneath the pain you carry, and beneath the identity created by your history, there is a quieter presence. That presence does not need to prove its worth. It does not compete with anyone. It does not demand that the past be different. It does not ask the future to guarantee your safety. It simply is. You may call this presence your higher self, your spirit, divine awareness, or the loving intelligence of the source. The name is less important than the recognition that this deeper presence exists within you and is available whenever you become still enough to notice it. The first line is, I am more than my thoughts, my fears, and my past. This sentence begins with awareness. Many people live as though every thought appearing in the mind must be true. A fearful thought arrives, and the body immediately responds. A memory appears, and the heart begins reliving an experience that ended years ago. An image of the future enters the mind, and the nervous system reacts as though that imagined future is already happening. You may have experienced this when someone did not respond to a message as quickly as you expected. Nothing has been explained. No rejection has taken place. Yet the mind begins creating a story. Perhaps they are angry. Perhaps I said something wrong. Perhaps they no longer care about me. Perhaps I am about to be abandoned again. The silence of another person becomes a doorway through which old fears enter. The event itself may be simple. A message has not yet been answered, but the ego takes the uncertainty and fills it with memories. It reaches into previous experiences of rejection, criticism, betrayal, or emotional neglect, and uses them to explain the present. Then the body tightens. You check the phone again. You replay the last conversation. You imagine what you will say if the person responds. You prepare for an emotional event that may never happen. This is how the mind can create suffering before reality has had an opportunity to reveal itself. Awareness begins when you pause and recognize, my mind is creating a story. You are not denying that something may be wrong. You are simply refusing to confuse an imagined possibility with the truth. This pause creates space. In that space, you begin to see the difference between a thought and the awareness observing the thought. If you can notice a thought, you cannot be limited to that thought. If you can observe fear, there must be something within you that is greater than fear. If you can remember the past, you are not trapped inside the past. You are the awareness in which the memory is appearing now. The mind says, I am anxious. Awareness says, anxiety is present. The mind says, I am broken. Awareness says, a part of me is hurting. The mind says, I am a failure. Awareness says, something did not unfold as I hoped, and I am still capable of learning, changing, and beginning again. The words may appear similar, but the inner effect is entirely different. When you say, I am anxious, anxiety becomes an identity. When you say anxiety is moving through me, anxiety becomes an experience. An identity feels permanent. An experience is allowed to change. Your thoughts are visitors. Some are loving, some are fearful, and some are echoes of experiences that ended long ago. You do not have to remove every difficult thought in order to become free. You only need to stop giving every thought authority over your life. The sky does not become the storm moving across it. Clouds may gather, thunder may sound, rain may fall for many hours, yet behind every storm, the spacious sky remains. Your awareness is like that sky. Grief can move through it. Fear can move through it. Anger, uncertainty, and disappointment can all move through it. But no passing emotion contains the whole truth of who you are. Many of the identities you carry were created during moments when you were trying to survive. Perhaps you became the strong one because the people around you needed support. Perhaps you became the quiet one because speaking honestly created conflict. Perhaps you became the pleasing one because approval felt safer than rejection. Perhaps you became the successful one because achievement was the only way you knew how to receive recognition. These identities may have helped you during a certain season. They are not necessarily wrong. But when you forget that they are roles, they become prisons. The strong one becomes unable to ask for help. The pleasing one becomes afraid to say no. The successful one believes rest is a sign of weakness. The quiet one carries years of unspoken truth. Then the ego says, this is simply who you are. But you are more than the role you learn to perform. You are more than the expectations placed upon you. You are more than the mistake you still remember. You are more than the opinion someone formed about you during one painful chapter of your life. This is why the first line is so important. I am more than my thoughts, my fears, and my past. Speak it slowly. Allow it to create a little distance between your awareness and the stories of the mind. You are not trying to erase your history. Your history contains lessons, wounds, victories, and wisdom. But your history is a chapter, not the entire book. You are the life still being written. The second line is, I release yesterday and allow this moment to be new. Yesterday is not only a date that has passed. Yesterday is every unfinished argument you continue inside your mind. It is every mistake you repeatedly use as evidence against yourself. It is every person you continue carrying in your emotional world, even though they are no longer present in your physical life. It is every expectation that did not become reality. It is every version of yourself you believe you should have been. The past is useful when it becomes wisdom. It becomes painful when it becomes identity. You may have been betrayed in a relationship. The betrayal was real. Trust was broken, and part of you learned to become cautious. Years later, you may meet someone honest and kind, yet the old experience remains active within you. A delayed response feels suspicious. A moment of emotional distance feels dangerous. A change in tone feels like the beginning of another betrayal. The person in front of you is not only meeting you, They are also meeting the memory of everyone who hurt you before. This does not mean you should ignore discernment. Wisdom is not blindness. You are allowed to notice patterns, ask questions, and protect your well-being. But protection becomes a prison when the past is allowed to make every decision for the present. The past can inform you without governing you. A scar can remind you that you healed. It does not have to become a prophecy that the same wound must happen again. Releasing yesterday does not mean forgetting. It does not mean calling harmful behavior acceptable. It does not mean abandoning the lessons you learned. It means allowing this moment to reveal itself before you decide that it must repeat what happened before. Every morning offers you a moment that has never existed. The light entering your room is new. The breath entering your body is new. The conditions of your life may appear familiar, but you are not exactly the same person who went to sleep the night before. Something within you has changed, even if the change is subtle. You have one more day of experience, one more night of rest, one more opportunity to see differently. Life is always moving, even when the ego insists that nothing is changing. A river may carry the same name, yet the water is never the same. You may stand beside it each day and recognize the landscape, but the river continues flowing. Your life is flowing too. The ego resists this because change threatens the identity it has carefully constructed. If you are no longer the wounded one, who will you become? If you are no longer the person who carries everyone, will people still need you? If you release resentment, what will protect you from being hurt again? If you stop punishing yourself, how will you make sure you never repeat your mistake? These questions reveal that the ego can become attached even to suffering. Pain is uncomfortable, but familiar pain often feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. You may know how to live with disappointment. You may know how to carry resentment. You may know how to expect rejection. Peace may feel more frightening because peace asks you to put down the armor you have worn for many years. Letting go can feel like losing part of yourself, but perhaps you are not losing yourself. Perhaps you are releasing what you had to become in order to survive. A tree does not believe it has failed when its leaves fall. The branches become empty, but the life within the tree remains. What appears to be lost may be part of a deeper preparation. There may be something falling away from your life now. A relationship, a role, an old dream, a belief about how your future was supposed to unfold. The space left behind may feel uncomfortable. The ego calls it emptiness because it cannot yet see what will replace what has been lost. But your spirit may recognize it as space, and space is where something new can enter. When you wake in the morning, you may gently say, "Yesterday has ended. I will carry its wisdom, but I will not carry all of its weight." You do not have to release the entire past in one moment. You may simply choose not to rehearse one old argument today. You may choose not to criticize yourself for one decision you made with the understanding available to you at that time. You may choose not to assume that one person's behavior represents the behavior of everyone you will ever meet. Small releases create inner space, and inner space allows the present to become visible. I release yesterday and allow this moment to be new. The third line is, I do not need to control everything in order to be at peace. The ego believes control will create safety. It tells you that if you plan carefully enough, anticipate every possible problem, understand every person's intention, and manage every detail, you will finally be able to relax. But the promised relaxation never arrives. There is always another possibility to consider, another problem to prevent, another person whose behavior must be understood, another outcome that must be guaranteed. You may spend an entire evening preparing for a conversation that will happen the next day. You imagine what the other person might say. You rehearse your explanations. You prepare your defenses. You predict their reactions and create responses to those reactions. By the time the actual conversation takes place, you have already experienced it many times in your mind, and then it may unfold very differently from what you imagine. The suffering did not come only from the conversation. Much of it came from your resistance to not knowing. Uncertainty is difficult for the ego because the ego believes an answer is always safer than a mystery. It may even prefer a frightening conclusion to an open possibility. But life is not entirely predictable. People change. Plans are interrupted. Bodies age. Relationships evolve. Doors close without providing immediate explanations. New paths appear that were not included in your original map. You can prepare wisely, but you cannot remove uncertainty from being alive. Peace, therefore, cannot be postponed until uncertainty disappears. If you wait to feel peaceful until everything is guaranteed, you will spend your life waiting. The deeper invitation is to discover a peace that can coexist with not knowing. This does not mean becoming passive. It does not mean refusing to plan or ignoring your responsibilities. It means making a plan without worshiping the plan. It means choosing a direction while remaining available to guidance. It means taking the next step without demanding to see the entire road. A seed cannot see the flower it is becoming. It cannot examine the future and guarantee that the weather will always be favorable. It responds to the conditions of the present. It receives moisture, opens in darkness, moves toward warmth, and allows the intelligence within it to guide its growth. You are often asked to live in the same way. The next step may be visible even when the entire journey is not. The next honest conversation, the next boundary, the next apology, the next hour of rest, the next decision that reflects who you wish to become. The ego says, "Show me the whole path, and then I will move." The spirit says, "Take the step that is clear, and allow the next one to be revealed." Your desire to control may have understandable roots. Perhaps you grew up in an environment where emotions were unpredictable. You learned to observe every change in tone and every shift in another person's mood. Perhaps important people in your life were unreliable. You learned that relaxation could lead to disappointment. Perhaps chaos entered your life without warning. You decided that constant alertness was the only way to remain safe. There is no need to judge this part of yourself. Control may once have been an intelligent response to a difficult situation, but a strategy that once protected you can later prevent you from living freely. The body may still believe that peace is dangerous. When you begin to relax, the mind may immediately search for something to worry about. It may say, "You are forgetting something. You should be preparing. Something could go wrong." Do not fight this voice. Fighting creates another form of inner tension. You can answer with compassion. "I understand why you learned to protect me this way, but I do not need to solve the entire future in this moment." You are not asking the frightened part of yourself to disappear. You are showing it that a wiser presence is now available. Control also appears in relationships. You may believe you will feel peaceful when another person finally understands you. When they apologize, when they change their habits, when they recognize your value, when they agree that your version of the story is correct. But each time your peace depends on another person's transformation, you place your inner life in their hands. You may communicate honestly. You may request change. You may establish consequences and boundaries, but you cannot enter another person's consciousness and force them to see what they are unwilling to see. Sometimes peace begins when you stop trying to receive understanding from someone committed to misunderstanding you. This is not defeat. It is the recovery of your energy. You may never receive the apology you hoped for. You may never hear the explanation that would make the past completely understandable. You may never know why a certain door closed, yet you can still become free. Peace does not always come from obtaining the answer. Sometimes it comes from releasing your demand that the answer must arrive. I do not need to control everything in order to be at peace. Allow these words to soften the body. Relax your shoulders, release the jaw. Let the breath become a little slower. You are not responsible for holding the universe together. There is an intelligence moving through life that does not require your constant supervision. The fourth line is, "I choose to meet myself and the world with love." Love is often misunderstood as an emotion that appears when people behave as you wish. But love is deeper than temporary affection. Love is an inner direction. It is the consciousness from which you choose to see, speak, listen, and act. Two people can perform the same action while carrying completely different intentions. One person remains silent because they wish to punish someone. Another remains silent because they do not want to speak from anger. One person helps because they fear rejection. Another helps because generosity is moving naturally through them. One person says yes while abandoning themselves. Another says yes because the choice is honest and freely given. The action may appear identical from the outside. The inner energy is not the same. When you choose love as your intention, your questions begin to change. Instead of asking, "How can I win this argument?" you ask, "How can I remain honest without becoming cruel?" Instead of asking, "How can I make this person approve of me?" you ask, "What choice allows me to remain connected to my own integrity?" Instead of asking, "Why does no one give me the love I need?" you ask, "Where have I been withholding love from myself?" The This question can be uncomfortable. You may desire understanding from others while refusing to listen to your own exhaustion. You may desire acceptance while criticizing your body, your sensitivity, your mistakes, and your unfinished healing. You may want someone else to recognize your worth while privately speaking to yourself with cruelty. Self-love is not constant admiration. It is not believing that you are superior. It is not avoiding responsibility for your mistakes. Self-love is the willingness to remain present with yourself when you are imperfect. It is resting when you are tired rather than treating exhaustion as evidence of weakness. It is acknowledging that something hurts instead of shaming yourself for feeling pain. It is apologizing when necessary without turning one mistake into a permanent identity. It is setting a boundary without needing to hate the person on the other side of it. Many people learn that love must be earned. You may have received approval when you were useful, quiet, successful, agreeable, or emotionally easy to manage. You learned that certain parts of you were welcome and other parts created discomfort. Slowly, you may have begun editing yourself in order to remain connected. You said yes when you wanted to say no. You smiled when you felt hurt. You solved other people's problems while hiding your own needs. You became skilled at recognizing what everyone else required, yet uncertain about what was happening inside you. This may appear as kindness, but beneath it there may be fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being called selfish, fear that love will disappear when you stop earning it. Then your kindness becomes a form of self-abandonment. You maintain peace around you by sacrificing peace within you. Eventually, resentment appears. You may wonder why you feel emotionally exhausted even though you are always helping. The deeper question is not simply, am I being generous? It is, am I giving from love or am I giving from fear? Love can be generous, but love does not require you to disappear. You may say no and remain loving. You may disappoint someone and remain compassionate. You may leave a harmful situation without carrying hatred. You may choose yourself without declaring war on anyone else. Another person's disappointment does not automatically mean you have done something wrong. It may mean you are no longer participating in a pattern that depended on your silence. The body may still feel guilt. Old conditioning may still tell you that you are selfish. But discomfort does not always mean you are making the wrong choice. Sometimes discomfort is the feeling of an old identity losing its power. Love also changes the way you speak to your former self. You may look back at a decision and wonder how you could have remained in a painful situation for so long. You may regret not speaking. You may regret leaving. You may regret trusting someone. You may regret ignoring your intuition. From your present perspective, the wiser decision appears obvious. But the person you were did not possess the awareness you have now. That person was choosing through the fears, wounds, beliefs, and understanding available at that time. You may still take responsibility. You may repair what can be repaired. But love invites you to stop using your present wisdom as a weapon against your former self. You might say, I forgive myself for trying to survive with what I understood then. This is not an excuse. It is an honest recognition that growth changes the way you see the past. You are not meant to remain the same person forever. If your previous choices now appear limited, it may be evidence that your awareness has expanded. I choose to meet myself and the world with love. Love may appear as gentleness. It may appear as truth. It may appear as a boundary. It may appear as silence, apology, courage, or departure. Love does not always look soft, but it never requires you to betray the deepest truth within you. The fifth line is, I free myself and others through forgiveness. Forgiveness is one of the most difficult spiritual ideas because the ego interprets forgiveness as surrender. It believes that resentment keeps you protected. It tells you that if you release anger, the other person will escape responsibility. It warns that if you stop replaying what happened, you may forget the lesson and become vulnerable again. But forgiveness and wisdom can exist together. You can forgive and still remember. You can forgive and still say no. You can forgive without returning to the relationship. You can forgive while allowing consequences to remain. Forgiveness is not always a reunion between two people. Sometimes it is a quiet separation between your present life and an old wound. Perhaps someone said words that changed the way you saw yourself. The person may no longer be present. Years may have passed, yet their voice continues inside your mind. Each time you question your intelligence, your appearance, your value, or your ability to be loved, the old words are spoken again. The event is no longer happening, but its emotional energy is still active. You may believe you are holding the other person inside your resentment, but often you are holding yourself beside the moment when you were hurt. Forgiveness opens the door. It says, what you did may be part of my history, but it will not be allowed to decide the person I become. This freedom may not happen immediately. Some wounds are like knots tightened over many years. Pulling them forcefully may make them tighter. You are allowed to forgive slowly. You are allowed to forgive in layers. You are allowed to begin with willingness rather than completion. Perhaps you cannot honestly say, I have released this completely. You may be able to say, I am willing to stop feeding this pain today. That willingness is enough. Forgiveness often begins when you become tired of replaying the conversation, tired of imagining an apology, tired of carrying bitterness into relationships that had nothing to do with the original wound. Tired of allowing one painful chapter to influence every page that follows. You do not release the wound because the offender deserves your peace. You release it because you deserve your freedom. Sometimes anger is covering grief. You may believe you are angry at what happened, but beneath the anger is sorrow for what should have happened. You wanted a parent to understand you. You wanted a partner to choose you. You wanted a friend to remain loyal. You wanted someone to protect you. You wanted life to follow the future you had imagined. The ego becomes attached not only to what happened, but also to the life it believes should have happened. It creates an alternative past and compares reality with it. If they had loved me differently, I would be happier now. If I had made another choice, my life would be better. If that opportunity had not disappeared, everything would have worked out. These thoughts may contain understandable pain, but they keep you arguing with an event that has already occurred. Acceptance does not mean you approve of what happened. It means you stop demanding that the past return and become different. A river cannot flow backward to choose another beginning. It can only continue from where it is. You can continue from where you are. You may not be starting from the place you wanted, but you can begin here. Forgiveness also includes forgiving yourself for how long healing has taken. The ego may create a spiritual expectation that says, I should be beyond this by now. It judges the return of sadness. It interprets anger as failure. It believes that if you were truly healed, the memory would no longer affect you. But healing is rarely a straight path. It moves like the ocean. A wave reaches the shore and then withdraws. Another wave comes forward. The movement appears repetitive, yet over time the shoreline changes. A memory may return without meaning that you have lost all progress. An emotion may arise because another layer is ready to be understood. When it returns, you can meet it differently. You do not need to build your home inside it. You can say, this pain is visiting again, and I will meet it with awareness. I free myself and others through forgiveness. These words do not erase justice. They do not erase boundaries. They release your spirit from the responsibility of carrying the event forever. The sixth line is, I trust the wisdom of the source even when I cannot see the entire path. Trust is easy when life agrees with your plans. It becomes a spiritual practice when the road becomes unclear. A door closes. A relationship changes. A job ends. A dream takes longer than expected. The future that once seemed certain disappears. In these moments, the ego demands an explanation. Why is this happening? What did I do wrong? When will this end? What am I supposed to do now? These questions are human. You do not need to silence them. But perhaps you can place them inside a larger question. Is it possible that something is moving through this experience that I cannot yet understand? This question does not promise that every painful event was deliberately created for your benefit. It does not ask you to call tragedy a gift. It simply leaves room for meaning to emerge. There may have been moments in your life that once appeared to be endings, but later revealed themselves as transitions. A rejection directed you toward another path. A period of loneliness taught you to hear your own voice. A failure softened your judgment of other people. A painful relationship revealed the boundaries you had never learned to establish. A season of uncertainty forced you to release an identity that no longer reflected who you were becoming. You may not choose to experience those events again. Yet something within you changed through them. A seed beneath the ground may believe it has been buried. It cannot see the flower it is becoming. It knows only darkness, pressure, moisture, and the breaking open of its familiar form. What appears to be destruction may be transformation taking place beyond the seed's understanding. You may be standing in such a season now. The familiar life has disappeared, but the new life is not yet visible. You feel caught between what has ended and what has not begun. The ego calls this failure because it cannot measure progress. The spirit recognizes it as transition. Trust does not mean pretending that uncertainty is comfortable. It means remaining available to guidance even when the entire answer has not arrived. The source may be understood in many ways. You may call it God. You may call it universal intelligence, divine love, spirit, or the sacred presence within life. The name is not as important as the recognition that you are not separate from the life moving through all things. The intelligence that opens a flower moves through you. The force that guides the seasons moves through your breath. The life that beats your heart does not wait for your conscious command. You are already participating in a mystery larger than the planning mind. Your heart continues beating while you sleep. Your body repairs itself without receiving detailed instructions from you. Morning arrives without your supervision. The earth continues moving through space. There is much in life that is being carried by an intelligence beyond the ego. This does not remove your responsibility. It places your responsibility within a larger relationship. You are responsible for your intention, your attention, your choices, and the quality of energy you bring to what is before you. You are not responsible for controlling every outcome. The ego speaks through urgency. It says, do something immediately or everything will be lost. The deeper self rarely hurries. It says, become still enough to see what is actually required. Many people fear silence because silence removes distraction. When activity stops, hidden emotions become visible, memories return, questions arise. Yet silence is also where the deeper self can be heard. You may not receive a dramatic answer. You may not see a sign or hear a voice. You may simply experience a subtle softening, a recognition that you do not need to solve everything in this moment. That softening is a form of guidance. Imagine looking into a river whose surface has been disturbed. You cannot see your reflection clearly. If you attempt to smooth the water with your hands, you create more movement. Clarity appears when the surface is allowed to settle. The mind is similar. You do not always find wisdom by adding more thought. Sometimes wisdom appears when thought is given space to become quiet. After speaking the 7 lines each morning, remain still for a few breaths. You do not need to force an insight. Place your hand over your heart and notice that life is already happening. The breath is arriving. The body is present. The morning has been given to you. Trust begins in these ordinary recognitions. I trust the wisdom of the source even when I cannot see the entire path. You may not know what comes next, but you can meet what is here now. You can take the next honest step, and when the next step is taken, another part of the path may become visible. The 7th line is, I carry peace within me, and I offer that peace wherever I go. Many people believe peace is something the world must give them. They will feel peaceful when the conflict ends, when the money arrives, when the children are safe, when the relationship becomes secure, when the body feels better, when the future becomes clear. There is nothing wrong with desiring supportive circumstances. External conditions affect human emotions, and some environments are genuinely more peaceful than others. But when your entire inner state depends on the world becoming predictable, peace remains fragile. Someone changes their tone, and peace disappears. A plan is delayed, and peace disappears. A comment is misunderstood, and peace disappears. An unexpected expense arrives, and peace disappears. The deeper spiritual invitation is to discover a peace that does not require life to become perfect before it can be felt. Peace is not the absence of every challenge. It is the relationship you create with the challenge. You may still feel disappointment. You may still experience grief. You may still become tired, angry, or uncertain. Inner peace does not remove your humanity. It gives your humanity a larger space in which to be held. When peace becomes something you carry, you stop waiting for other people to create the qualities you desire. You want gentleness, so you practice gentleness. You want understanding, so you listen more deeply. You want appreciation, so you notice what you appreciate. You want less conflict, so you stop rehearsing unnecessary arguments in your own mind. This does not guarantee that other people will respond in the same way. Peace is not a strategy for manipulating the world. Love is not a bargain in which you behave kindly so that everyone must be kind in return. You offer these qualities because they reflect the person you have chosen to be. A lamp does not ask whether the room has earned its light. It shines because light is its nature. Perhaps peace is part of your nature too. Not the temporary peace that comes when everything goes according to plan, but the deeper peace that appears when you are no longer at war with yourself. When you meet an angry person, you may remember that anger often protects pain. You do not need to accept mistreatment. You may leave, speak firmly, or create distance, but you do not have to become the energy you are facing. When someone judges you, you may remember that people often speak through their own conditioning. You can consider whether there is something useful to learn without carrying their entire opinion into your identity. When you make a mistake, you can correct it without building a home in shame. When plans change, you can adjust without deciding that life has abandoned you. This is alignment. Your thoughts, words, and actions begin moving in the same direction. You no longer speak about peace while privately feeding resentment. You no longer speak about love while continually abandoning yourself. You no longer speak about trust while attempting to force every outcome. Alignment is not perfection. It is awareness followed by return. You will forget these 7 lines. You will react from fear. You will become caught in an old pattern. You will say something you wish you had not said. You will try to control something that cannot be controlled. Then awareness will return. And the moment awareness returns, the path home is already opened. Do not judge how far you wandered. Return. Return from fear to love. Return from reaction to awareness. Return from judgment to understanding. Return from resistance to acceptance. Spiritual growth is not measured by never leaving your center. It is often revealed by how gently you return. Each morning becomes a practice for this return. Before you enter the concerns of the world, sit for a few quiet moments. Do not immediately reach for the phone. Do not begin by reading what other people want from you. Let the first voice you hear be a voice chosen consciously. Notice the breath entering and leaving the body. You do not have to meditate perfectly. You do not have to empty your mind. Thoughts may still appear. Let them move without turning every thought into a journey. Then speak the 7 lines slowly. I am more than my thoughts, my fears, and my past. Allow yourself to remember that no thought, emotion, or memory contains your entire identity. I release yesterday and allow this moment to be new. Let the past keep its wisdom while returning its weight. I do not need to control everything in order to be at peace. Notice where the body is holding tension and give it permission to soften. I choose to meet myself in the world with love. Remember that love may appear as kindness, honesty, patience, courage, or a necessary boundary. I free myself and others through forgiveness. You do not have to complete forgiveness today. You may simply take 1 step away from resentment. I trust the wisdom of the source even when I cannot see the entire path. You may not know what comes next, but you can meet what is present with awareness. I carry peace within me, and I offer that peace wherever I go. Let the day become a place where this intention is practiced. After speaking, remain quiet. You may ask, what am I being invited to release today? Do not force an answer. It may appear as a name, a memory, a worry, or a feeling in the body. Perhaps you are being invited to release the need to prove yourself. Perhaps you are being invited to release an argument that continues only inside your mind. Perhaps you are being invited to release the belief that everyone must understand your choices. Perhaps you are being invited to release the guilt that prevents you from resting. Letting go is rarely one dramatic act. It often happens through small decisions made throughout the day. You release the need to answer immediately. You release the desire to correct every misunderstanding. You release the comparison that appeared while looking at someone else's life. You release the demand that healing must follow your preferred schedule. You release the assumption that one difficult moment has ruined the entire day. Each release creates space, and in that space, gratitude becomes possible. Gratitude is not pretending that every circumstance is pleasant. It is the ability to recognize that even within an imperfect life, something sacred remains. The warmth of a cup in your hands, the sound of morning rain, a person who listens without trying to fix you, the strength that carried you through a season you once believed you could not survive, the breath that continues arriving, the fact that another morning has been given to you. The ego constantly directs attention toward what is missing. Gratitude gently reveals what is already here. You may end your morning practice by naming one thing for which you are sincerely grateful. You do not need a long list. One honest recognition can soften the heart. Then carry the practice into your day. When comparison appears, remember, my life is not late. I am meeting my path where I am. The ego creates imaginary schedules. It tells you that you should have healed sooner, succeeded earlier, understood more, or become someone different by now. But wisdom does not follow the calendar of the ego. Some truths can only be understood after you have lived through the questions. Some forms of compassion appear only after you have made mistakes. Some inner doors open only after an old identity begins falling away. The evening sky is not less beautiful because it is not morning. Every season carries its own light. You are not behind another person because there was never one universal path you were required to follow. A rose does not feel inadequate because an oak grows taller. The moon does not apologize for shining differently from the sun. Your life has its own rhythm. When an old memory returns, say, yesterday does not have to become today. When someone challenges your peace, ask, what response reflects the person I wish to be? When plans change, breathe and remember, I do not need to control everything in order to be supported by life. There will be moments when you forget everything you intended that morning. You may become impatient. You may speak from hurt. You may return to an old pattern before you recognize what is happening. When awareness returns, do not use it as a weapon against yourself. Use it as an invitation to begin again. A loving return is more transformative than harsh self-correction. You can apologize. You can choose silence. You can take another breath. You can change the next sentence. You can begin again in the middle of the afternoon. The source is not present only during peaceful morning rituals. It is present in traffic, offices, kitchens, waiting rooms, difficult conversations, and lonely nights. Every place becomes part of your spiritual practice when awareness is brought into it. You are not asked to withdraw from life in order to find peace. You are invited to carry peace into life. This understanding may also change the way you think about purpose. Purpose is often imagined as one extraordinary task you must discover before your time runs out. But perhaps purpose is also expressed through the quality of presence you bring to what is already before you. Purpose may be revealed when you listen without preparing your reply. When you end a pattern that has passed through your family for generations. When you refuse to speak to yourself with the cruelty you once accepted as normal. When you offer patience to someone who is struggling. When you choose honesty instead of approval. When you forgive what no longer deserves your energy. These moments may never be publicly recognized, yet they change the spiritual atmosphere of your life. You become less interested in appearing peaceful and more devoted to becoming peace. You become less interested in being seen as loving and more willing to practice love when it is inconvenient. You become less interested in proving your spiritual growth and more accepting of how much you are still learning. This humility is freedom. You no longer need to become perfect before feeling connected to the source. You recognize that the source is present even within the unfinished places. It is present in the question before the answer. In the wound before forgiveness is complete. In the winter before the first sign of spring. Your life does not have to be fully understood in order to be sacrable. Tomorrow morning, the old thoughts may return. They may tell you that you are behind, that you are alone, that you must solve everything immediately, that your peace depends on someone else changing. Let these thoughts speak. Then listen for the quieter voice beneath them. The voice that says, you are more than this fear. The voice that says you are allowed to begin again. The voice that says you can release what has already passed. The voice that says you do not walk through life separated from the loving intelligence that created you. This voice does not threaten. It does not rush. It does not compete. It waits patiently beneath the noise. It is the voice of remembrance. As you continue this practice, you may discover that peace was never something you needed to chase. Peace was something temporarily covered by resistance, noise, and old stories. One morning at a time, you are uncovering it. You are not becoming worthy. You are remembering that worth was never absent. You are not creating love. You are releasing what prevented love from flowing through you. You are not becoming an entirely different person. You are returning to the deepest truth of who you have always been. So before the world tells you what to fear, what to desire, and who you should become, give yourself a few quiet moments. Speak the 7 lines. Listen to the silence surrounding them. Then carry their meaning into the way you live. At the end of the day, do not ask whether you were perfect. Ask whether you returned. Did you return from fear to love? Did you return from judgment to awareness? Did you return from resistance to acceptance? Did you return from self-abandonment to honesty? If you returned even once, the day was not wasted. If these words have touched something within you, share which of the 7 lines your heart most needed to hear. Your reflection may become the reminder another person has been quietly searching for. And as you move into the next morning, remember this. The light within you does not need to fight the darkness. It only needs to be uncovered. It only needs to be trusted. It only needs to be remembered. Every morning, life gives you another opportunity to remember.